the Common Connected podcast. I'm your host, Janine Halloran, and today's episode is about how to help teens who are experiencing anger. What are some strategies that we can use with them? So before we even dive into coping skills, one of the first things that I think we really need to focus on with our tweens and teens especially is connection. Before you begin anything, connection is key. Tweens and teens especially want and need to feel seen and heard and listened to. And so in order for us to talk about bigger things like how to manage your emotions, we need to start with talking about smaller things and having conversations about everyday things, trying to understand what's going on in their world a little bit. So you can start by making some connections over something small, like what YouTube channels are they watching, and potentially watching one of the creators that they like together. You could listen to the music that they're listening to and have a chat about it, or you could watch a movie that they're interested in and get a chance to talk about that, listen to a podcast they like. Play a game together, a board game or a video game. There are lots of different ways that you can connect with your teens. And actually, when I was writing up the notes for this podcast, I actually thought of a whole bunch of them. So I think my next solo episode is actually going to be all about ways that you can connect with your kids and teens. So lots and lots of different ideas for that. So I'll be sharing more of those in about a month in my next solo episode. So stay tuned for that. So I will be putting that together shortly. But once you've connected, once you've started having conversations and it's pretty normalized for you to talk about different things, then you can start talking about what helps them when they feel certain ways and explore what works for them and maybe some other ideas for what can help them later on, maybe ideas that they haven't thought of yet so that they could potentially use those strategies when they are feeling angry. So one thing I always really try to emphasize, especially with my kids who are feeling a lot of anger, is to help them recognize where they feel it in their body. So that's the first strategy, recognizing feelings in your body. So helping them be able to identify, I feel it in my hands, I feel it in my arms, I feel it in my stomach, and being able to help them notice it sooner and to be able to act on it and do something constructive, do something healthy and safe when they're starting to feel that way. So really that body awareness can help them be able to make better choices as they are moving forward, to try and come up with a strategy that will work for them. So really about feelings recognition, but recognizing that feeling in their body so that they can then act upon that feeling in a safe and healthy way, if that makes sense. So another thing I like to have teens do is some breathing exercises. So especially when you are in that fight, flight, or freeze, and really when I think about anger, I really think about the fight mode of fight, flight, or freeze. So when they are in that mode, one thing that can help them start to get out of that mode is to do a shorter breath in and a longer breath out. So it can help them when they are in that more it can help them when they are in fight, flight, or freeze to get back down to rest and digest if they do a shorter breath in and a longer breath out. Sometimes it helps if you count. Some kids like the counting, like count 4 in and breathe 6 out. Other times they just like to do a shorter breath in and a longer breath out. So it can really help kids get out of that fight, flight, or freeze mode, which is what we are looking to help them do. The next strategy I have used with kids is actually making paper airplanes. I know that sounds sort of silly, but what's really helpful is that sometimes their brains just need a break. Sometimes it is really powerful to just shift the energy a little bit and do something a little bit silly. Sometimes what I'll even have kids do is write down all the things that they're mad about, write down all the things that they want to say but they can't, write all the things that are making them angry, and then fold the paper plane and throw it away. And that is a way that they can sort of process some of the things that are making them frustrated and angry, but then also getting that energy out of their body as well. A strategy I used to use with middle schoolers when I was working in a middle school is to squeeze dough. So to squeeze some Play-Doh, squeeze anything that has like a texture that they really like. So like mad matter, slime, if they're into slime, something that they can physically squeeze to help, again, sort of move through all of that anger. When you get angry, sometimes it feels like there's a lot of energy in your body, and you want to be able to help them express that energy in a safe and healthy way. So squeezing your hands and releasing them is one thing that you can do. And, it's something that not necessarily kids want to do in the middle of a classroom. Teens won't want to do that, like if they're in the middle of like algebra, but if they're in the privacy of their home, if they're in the privacy of a counseling office, that's something that they could absolutely do. Another strategy I've used with great success is to put a cool compress on your neck. I once worked with a teen who would get really hot when he was angry. He would get like really warm. He'd feel it, and he would see his whole body sort of flush a little bit, and you could see it coming up on his neck. And so one thing that really did help him was just to put a cool compress, like just a cool like a set of paper towels written like with cold water and wrung out, and it just go on the back of his neck to help cool him down, because we couldn't actually have a conversation until he was a little bit calmer. And that was one of the things that would help calm him down. That or a cold drink of water. Those two things with him were really something that helped him get out of that like really angry mode, to be able to stop and have a conversation about what was making him angry. He was at that point where he wasn't able to have the conversation. So I wanted him to be able to do something so that he would be able to start to talk with me about what was actually going on. A strategy that I found really helpful myself as a teenager was what you can control versus what you cannot control. So to be able to identify the things that you do have control over, and to identify the things you do not have control over, and to focus on the things that you can have control over, and think about what actions you can do, what behaviors you can do, what words you can say, what are the things that you have control over, and then be able to figure out what can I do with that I have control over, and to sort of shift your thinking when it comes to the things that you can't control, to understand you won't be able to control if your teacher decides to give a pop quiz. You won't be able to control if somebody gets in trouble for something. But you can control your reactions. You can control what you say, how you act, what you do. So to be able to distinguish and talk through like what are those things you can versus can't control, and helping them focus on the can, is really helpful for teens especially. I think it's actually helpful for everybody to be able to think about what you can versus what you can't control. And that brings me to the final strategy that I wanted to mention, channeling negative energy into positive action. So we're thinking about those things that we can control and the things that we can't control. Are there ways that we can influence the things that we can't control? Are there steps that we can take within our realm of control that can make a positive difference? I think it's really powerful to think about all the things that have changed in the world because somebody saw that there was an injustice. Somebody saw that something was not quite right and wanted to do something about it. They wanted to make a change. It can be very empowering for teens to be reminded, you have power. You have something that you can do. You can take all this negative energy. You can take all this anger that you have about this particular situation, and you can channel it into positive action. So it's kind of empowering for teens to be able to remember that, to remind them of that, to help them acknowledge that, so that they can do something themselves to be able to help and make the world into a place that they would like to live in and like to be in. So once you've connected with your teens and then you've talked about some strategies, the next step is to make a plan. So what you do is you actually go through and you identify these are the things that you are feeling angry about. Like, let's just put them out there. This is something that's making you feel angry. And then, let's figure out what strategies we're going to use when you feel that way. When the next time you're experiencing that, let's list out 3 or 4 strategies you're going to try, right? What are the strategies you're going to try to see if this is going to help you when you're starting to feel that anger in your body? And then finally, what you do after something has happened is you come back and you assess. You can check in. This is one of the biggest factors in helping you help teens to manage their big feelings like anger. So reflect and update the game plan. So what worked, what didn't work, what changes do we need to make for the next time, and then update it. So this strategy didn't work. This strategy worked for a minute. This strategy worked for 5 minutes. Okay, so get rid of the strategy that didn't work at all. Are there other strategies that maybe could you want to try and see if that's going to be helpful and make you feel better and manage your feeling in that moment a little bit better? So it's always sort of working and moving and reiterating and trying again to see what is going to work and taking out the strategies that don't, adding in new strategies that might work better, and getting better and better with each situation. So if you would like some more strategies for coping skills for kids, if you want to get a checklist of all of the different sorts of coping skills that you can have kids and teens try, if you want more resources to explore coping skills for teens, I have a coping skills toolkit that's available at copingskillsforkids.com/newsletter. And so within that toolkit is the checklist that I love using with my clients, where I go through and I check off the things that work for them, cross off the ones that don't, circle the ones you want to try. So it's really trying to build their coping skills, build their coping strategies, helping them identify what already works, helping them discard the things that do not work at this time for them, and helping them discover some new strategies they might want to try to try and expand on their coping, expand their coping skills toolbox. So I hope you give that a try. You can go over to copingskillsforkids.com/newsletter, and you can sign up for our newsletter and you'll be able to get that free download. It has lots of other resources in there too. So there's like the 3-point scale and 5-point scale, which is what I would use for teenagers to help them identify the different levels of feeling and different strategies they can use in different levels of feeling. So if they're feeling just a little angry versus medium-sized angry versus really super angry, what are the different strategies they could use at those levels? So I hope that gives you a little bit of insight, and if you are looking for some more resources, that's a great place to start. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you liked it, please feel free to share it with your friends and colleagues, or rate it and review us wherever you listen. And one last thing, don't forget about yourself. Take a few minutes, have a little fun, and have an awesome